Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IoT For All Podcast. I'm Ryan Chacon, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about why data-driven decision-making is so important and how you can improve your ability to make data-driven decisions. With me today will be Neil Sahota, the Artificial Intelligence Advisor to the United Nations. Very exciting conversation, lots of good stuff here. Prior to jumping into it, we'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to our channel if you've not done so already. Give this video a thumbs up and hit that bell icon so you get the latest episodes as soon as they are out. All right, before we get into it, we have a quick word from our sponsor. Silicon Labs, a leader in secure, intelligent wireless technology, has launched their 2023 Tech Talk schedule. This year's Tech Talks include dedicated technology series for Matter, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and LPWAN in order to help you build the development skills needed to deliver cutting-edge IoT products. Join Silicon Labs experts and industry leaders for these one-hour live virtual trainings created for developers by developers. Accelerate your device development today by registering at silabs.com. That's the letter S, the letter I, labs.com. Welcome, Neil, to the IoT For All podcast. Thanks for being here this week.
Hey Ryan, thanks for having me on, man. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. For our audience's sake, let's kick this off with a quick introduction about yourself, background, experience, kind of what you do.
To put it simply, I'm a guy that likes to solve big, complex problems, and doing that through the use of emerging technology. So it's taking me the path of helping on things like climate change, some of the UN SDG initiatives,
Yeah.
helping big companies, and well, just trying to make the world a better place.
Tell me about kind of the involvement you have with the UN. I know when we were first speaking and talking to kind of your team, that was very interesting thing that stuck out to me. I know there's some involvement there on the AI side as well, but just talk about the work you do from in that capacity with the UN.
So I serve as the United Nations AI advisor. And so I help them
Okay.
actually create the AI for Good initiative, which is using AI and some other emerging technology to actually try and make the sustainable goals a reality. So there's
Okay.
17 SDGs, as they call it, like end hunger, zero poverty. I won't bore you with all 17 that the member nations want to try and make a reality by 2030.
Fantastic. It's exciting stuff.
It is. It's probably the most meaningful, impactful work I've ever done, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be part of that journey.
Yeah, fantastic. I know we have a lot of things we want to dive into today, so let's go ahead and get into it. At a high level, I wanted if you could talk about data-driven decision making. We talk about that a bit when as it relates to IoT a lot, but we don't really refer to it as data-driven decision making. And I thought that was something that'd be important to kind of discuss in a higher level detail about why that's so important for organizations and different initiatives to be able to um, uh, or I guess why it's so important to be able to make decisions based on data. But can you kind of elaborate on, from your perspective, why data driven decision making is so important for organizations, groups, alliances, you name it?
I mean, the most straightforward reason is it reduces the bias factor, right? We're used to
Sure.
experience all these things. I'm not discounting that, but historically we've gone from the gut, and we've done that even in the face of ignoring data, what the data is actually trying to tell us. And we remember the times it worked out, and we kind of discount the times that our hunch was wrong. And I think we've made a lot of faux pas, I guess I'll call them, over the decades or centuries doing that.
Yeah.
But now that we live in an age where we can collect, store a lot of data, we have all these powerful tools to help us analyze and draw insight.
Right.
It seems like it's a new untapped reservoir that companies and people are just slowly migrating to now because it's so
Mm.
different than what we did before.
How would you kind of talk about the differences there, kind of what we did before versus where we are now, and kind of what's contributed to maybe that migration being slower in some places and obviously faster in others?
Well, let me share a story from my past. I was working with a large airline carrier group. They were trying to integrate
Mm.
all their operations together. And 6 months into the whole project, the travel expenses were about six times higher than they had estimated. And, for
Okay.
airlines, they have thin margins. They're always watching the dollar, so to speak. And rather than look at the data and say, okay, where are the expenses really coming from? The executive from one of the airlines who's overseeing this is like, oh, it's all the employees kind of living it up because they're upset about their salaries and pension cuts. You have all these
Sure.
consultants, and so as a result, they instituted these draconian travel policy things, like you have to have a
Mm.
receipt for everything.
Yep.
They had a fixed amount how much you're going to reimburse for food. They're not going to reimburse you for lunch anymore. And okay, and what wound up happening was the expenses started going up,
Okay.
right? So it didn't actually fix the problem; it made it worse.
Oh,
People
wow.
were upset; they were trying to reach their limits. Now they weren't actually spending all that money. Ultimately, seeing that, finally somebody said, "Okay, let's get rid of that guy and figure out what's really going on." Looked at the data. The major contributor for the high expenses was that they were asking people to do these last minute international trips. Like, oh my God, there's going to be a
Mm.
meeting in London tomorrow. You need to be there. Go catch this flight.
Right. Right.
Last minute international ticket are expensive.
Mm.
That was the primary reason. Once they identified that, like, okay, wait a second, do people have to be there? They have to be in person.
Right.
That resolved the problem. But because the initial thing was to go by the gut, they actually exacerbated the problem.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I think that's the challenge we see, right? You gotta
Yeah, for
in
sure.
an airline veteran of like 25 years going like, "This is what I've always seen," that's probably the root cause.
Right, right, right. So let me ask you then, if I'm a company listening to this and I obviously understand the value of data driven decision making, but have not completely implemented enough solutions to help our company do that well, how can companies be thinking about improving their ability to make data driven decisions? Um, and I guess talk a little bit to that, or even at a high level, just how we as a society can improve our ability to do that.
It's I think it's 2 key things on that front, Ryan. The first is you gotta develop that culture, and you gotta, and particularly not just, "Okay, let's be data driven," but let's put the trust into the data,
Okay.
right? That sometimes the quote unquote "hard facts" are probably better sources than our conjecture. And that's tough because it diminishes our role in the universe to a degree,
Right.
that we're not as special as we might think. The second is to really build out the infrastructure to make sure we have good, robust data.
Mm,
I remember working with a major railroad company, and they had trouble tracking where the rail cars were. They weren't optimized. Stuff was breaking down, and we rolled this whole initiative saying like we can put IoT sensors in the cars, on the tracks, all these places, so we can actually not just track things better, but we can start getting good data on the actual wear and tear of the equipment. And that by having that, it actually enabled them to do preventive maintenance rather than just regular maintenance. They were actually able to take things out of service before they broke down. And for them, that was an eye opener. They never even imagined something like that was possible until they actually had the data.
right, right, right. Yeah, it's been a very interesting kind of thing to watch over the last. I've been in the industry for 6, 7 years now, and just seeing how companies have evolved to first understand what these different technologies that exist are, how they can benefit their business, and then what their business can do with more data to make better decisions. And I think just like conceptually, you ask anybody, they're going to say, "Yeah, if you have more data, then this is fantastic. We can do something with it." But there's a lot of kind of nuances to how to do that well, not just from the implementation of the solution to collect the right data, but also how to present the data, how to make sure the end user has something that's usable for them and things like that. And it's been very exciting to see kind of the transformations we've gone through as an industry with the technology getting more mature, the costs coming down, and just companies being able to now adopt and see the benefits of a lot of the things that have been kind of being built over the last number of years.
No, 100%. You actually touch upon something really critical, Ryan, that I think sometimes gets glossed over is the buy-in factor, right? I've
Yeah,
experienced
sure.
this myself, and I know lots of people have that. You go, you do the due diligence, you use the data, you present the insights, the conclusions, the recommendations, all backed, and then people are like, "No, I don't believe that," you know,
Right,
or "That's
right, right,
not what I want to do," and it's
right, right. Yeah, it's super interesting. Now, let me ask you, because given your role that you have with the UN on the AI side, and I'm sure you work on many other AI projects, it's been a very popular topic. This just to start this year off when it comes to AI across industries and how it's being used. But as it relates to more of the enterprise IoT side, it's been very interesting to have people kind of talk more about it. But if we kind of break that out one level further and talk about like what we've been kind of touching on here, which is that the ability to make data driven decisions, how do you see AI and IoT working together to enable that for businesses in a more efficient way?
So interesting thing here is that AI can't really do much without IoT.
Yeah,
So the fuel for AI is data, and that's exactly what IoT is. And
right,
I think people forget that, all the information we're collecting through IoT sensors is really for machine consumption rather than for human consumption because there's just a huge volume of data.
right,
And we're tapping into that. Like in the UN, one of the SDGs is smart cities. That's totally fueled by IoT.
right,
The ability to capture like traffic information, the usage within a building, monitoring through like wearable health devices. You need that stream of information to feed the AI system, and then the AI
right.
can monitor and find the slightest deviations and alert a person to what's actually going on.
Yeah,
But
that's a yeah.
so
No, go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead.
See, go and finish. Go and finish.
I was going to use one. And I was going to apologize to everyone if it's a little bit gross, but this is the whole concept behind the smart toilet.
Yeah.
Right? It's a toilet with IoT sensors in it, and as you produce waste, it's capturing that data, and AI is, analyzing it.
Yep.
So well, it seems innocuous, but you think about it, how much data gets collected on a daily basis.
Sure.
As soon as you contract like a virus, or as soon as you show early onset of disease,
Yeah.
they're going to pick up on that, right? They're going to
Right.
get the alert. We know the earlier we catch something, the more easily we can actually treat it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you extrapolate that out across different use cases, different industries, different problems that need to be solved. You really start to see how these AI models can be or need to be kind of fed this data, and where that data comes from, like you said, is you need something to collect that data, and that's what IoT is. Whether it's on the consumer level or the business level, IoT is about putting these sensors and collecting data off physical assets, and that is something that without IoT you can't get the data on, which then the models for AI just sit there. They don't have the data to kind of work with. It's a requirement for AI to have that data, and that's what IoT really does. So it's very exciting to kind of see AI grow from just something people talk about to now actually being implemented and being utilized in a lot of these IoT solutions to enable that decision making based on all that data that's being collected.
100%. And I think while IoT's become is really the foundational structure to make AI successful,
Right.
now with the growth of AI, we're seeing an explosion of the usage of IoT. And the last stat I think I saw was there's I think 327 IoT sensors installed like every minute around the world now.
Wow. And so what happens if companies aren't able to get good data or get have data in general, is there still a value to AI with particular things? Like, I guess without that data coming into AI, what can AI do, or how can should people be thinking about AI, or is it really like it's critical for AI to work the way it's intended to in order or as long as it has data, which is going to come from IoT? Like how are people utilizing AI maybe without sufficient data or enough data?
It's really hard to have an effective AI solution without enough good, robust data. It's just
Okay.
it's unfortunately the reality. AI, it's not programmed. That's I think what a lot of people are not used to. It's a different computing model. We don't like program AI. AI learns. It's very much akin to like how human beings learn. It has a corpus, which is the data set. It has something we call the training data set, I should say, something we call the ground truth, rules on how to make decisions. And then you feed it lots of things and it tries things. You ask it to try and
Right.
answer questions or do something, and it has human teachers to teach it. And that's how it wires its neural network. So without
Right.
enough data, enough good data, the AI can't actually learn.
Yeah, for sure. Are there so outside of the technology itself, are there other conditions that in the real world that we should be thinking about that impact that AI, IoT working together and driving that data decision making for organizations?
Yeah, one of the biggest actual concerns is: are we? collecting the right data. So we always
Okay.
talk about like big data, and we think
Right.
like we'll just dump everything in. Well, there could be some. We've seen there's been unintended consequences to that. That it
Okay.
introduces some biases that weren't really relevant, but the AI somehow thinks that they are, and that could be a big issue because that can then skew the results. The other thing I think we're trying to learn is that we don't know how some things really work, and that it's
Sure.
not about big data, it's about medium data or the right data. Language is a great example. You want to teach an AI to be fluent in any language, whether it's English, French, Japanese. The
Sure.
rule of thumb is it's got to quote unquote hear 100 million words,
Wow.
right? Obviously, repeated. But a human child actually becomes fluent in a language by hearing 10 million words. So
Okay.
it's not the volume, it's some specific type of words or phrases that trigger the cognitive learning. We just
Mm.
don't know what that is. And when we're learning our first language, we don't have the ability to explain how we're actually learning it.
Yeah,
So it's a weird catch 22.
for sure. That's very interesting. I never knew that. So let me ask you kind of one of my last questions before we wrap up here is around challenges that businesses or that you've seen businesses kind of come across when it comes to the adoption, the implementation of IoT AI solutions. Um, I know a big piece of that is the investment that has to go into this at times, which is working on being solved and bringing costs down and being able to do pilots and things like that. But there's an infrastructure layer to it. There's a lot of different pieces that businesses need to have kind of in line for them to feel comfortable adopting, as well as a justified business case that an ROI is going to be attached to. So, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen companies battle with that have maybe prohibited them from adopting these technologies to help them make data driven decisions?
The infrastructure costs you're talking about, Ryan, are actually probably the biggest one I've seen.
Okay.
It's in some cases it's like, well, hey, this will like with the farmers, this will help me grow more crops. I can improve crop yield like 30%. You can try and figure out an ROI from that, but a lot of this is also kind of prevention. And so
Okay.
the threat of loss of crops, loss of business, that's much harder to quantify, right? And
Right.
particularly when it's not a guarantee, there's just some probability. That's what I see people or organizations really struggle with, because that's the whole, like preventive maintenance or
Yeah. Sure.
upkeep or of the business. That's the more critical aspect, business continuity, and they don't know really how to quantify that well.
Hmm.
And most organizations look at IT infrastructure as a cost center.
Okay.
And we know how it is, especially with the down global economy, that people look to minimize investments into cost centers or try and cut from cost centers, which unfortunately takes away the underpinnings from being able to do some of these things. So if we
Yeah.
got something working good enough, why should I pour more money into it? It's like, why should I try and, how much, why am I trying to fix something that's not broken is what I often hear.
Yeah, how can they, see the benefit without the investment, which is always tough to battle with. I know one of the things we've been advocates for is the more adoption we see in different industries and the more publicity that these success stories and these solutions are getting, the more likely it is that other organizations that face similar problems or in similar industries will start to hopefully come around to the adoption of a lot of these solutions that there's other people are seeing success with because they'll be more tried and true, from a implementation standpoint, and especially in like the industrial space, there's a lot of benefits and value these technologies will have, but there are people who are very hesitant because, to your point, it works. If it's not broken, why are we going to work on fixing it? But until they start to see the real value of a lot of these things that maybe they weren't able to realize before, the data they can collect, the decisions they can make, the way they can not only hopefully cut down the cost by becoming more efficient, but also potentially drive new business models and revenue streams. Once they start seeing that, we hope that that kind of brings down the fear or the hesitancy that they might have when it comes to adopting these solutions across all industries.
No, 100%. And I think there's just an inflection point we haven't reached yet, that when enough companies are actually doing this, it'll force everyone to do it. Otherwise, you're at a disadvantage. It's not so much that it's a
Right.
competitive advantage anymore. It's just you're behind the curve.
Right, for sure. Absolutely. I think that's what it's kind of becoming now. It maybe wasn't so much a few years ago, but now it's becoming a thing where you need to just, in order to compete, you need to be able to be making these decisions based on data, using IoT to collect that data, and then AI to run those models, which just gets the data to be even more useful and better for that end user. So. Um, this is all great stuff. I really appreciate you kind of taking the time. What are your thoughts kind of like throughout the rest of the year? I mean, AI obviously has been blowing up beginning of this year with more kind of, at least it seems like, more things that consumers can interact with, like GPT and things along those lines. But just generally speaking, where do you kind of see AI going this year? Is it something that there's I don't want to say there's more hype than really needs to be, but because it is a lot of very exciting stuff. But do you see that hype continuing to grow? Do you see more new applications from an AI perspective, kind of just rolling out across industries? What are your kind of thoughts just going on through the rest of this year that you're kind of looking forward to or excited to kind of see develop or potentially grow?
Well, Ryan, the hype will always grow. But I think in terms of actual practicality,
Yeah,
I think the big thing we're going to see is, with Dolly 2, ChatGPT,
yeah,
the more adoption of generative AI, which has been around for like 6, 7 years actually. I think this is going to be a real precursor to a field in AI we call artificial empathy,
okay,
where the machines, even though they can't feel the emotions, can recognize in other people and adjust how they interact with us. So we
yeah,
kind of talk about that realism factor. I mean, imagine ChatGPT can pick up that you're feeling a little down and tries to cheer you up. I think now we're at the cusp of seeing that become more the norm,
yeah,
and because I think the technology, at least around artificial empathy, has starting to reach that stage, and with the explosion of generative AI, you're
yeah.
seeing more and more people kind of asking for this now, that they believe it's
Interesting.
possible, that they're gonna be open to actually experimenting and embracing artificial empathy.
Yeah, well, I watched the movie Megan a couple weeks ago, and that was a very interesting part of it. Obviously, I know it's a movie, but it was they built it to be pretty empathetic, to build a connection with the person that it was, building a relationship with from a friendship standpoint, and that was very interesting to see. And as this Megan doll was kind of talking and working with this child, or building a relationship with this child, there was an argument or conversation about like needing to go to school, and the human girl was basically like, I have this, this friend, this doll robot that is teaching me everything. Like, and it can ask it questions, it's giving, precise answers, it's can be taught to or told to give her lessons and things. It just made me think about like the evolution of a chat GPT type thing, because it's not just a search engine, right? It's giving you answers, it's giving you different kind of responses than you would get if you just kind of needed to go search and do your own research for Google. And being able to enable that kind of thing with the empathetic side, or the empathy side that you're talking about, could be really powerful for humans in general. And I think it's really exciting to kind of follow along and see what happens there.
100%. I mean, we're moving towards the holy grail of our own personalized AI concierge.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a super exciting space, and I think one of the things I've mentioned to people when they've asked me just like, how do I see like a tool like ChatGPT influencing like the marketing or the content space? I definitely think it's an enabler and is definitely going to help, but there's still a element that obviously you need the humans to be involved in from the creative standpoint. Um, and the more applications that are built using these tools, like we've seen a lot of people take the OpenAI APIs and build functional tools that have a intended purpose, as opposed to just an open-ended, type something into the search box. I think that's what's going to be most interesting, is how people use the functionality and the data set and the APIs to build tools with an intended purpose for end users to just get better results and do more with. So, very exciting space to be involved in, and I'm sure your day to day is probably very exciting to have to, talk about this and just kind of stay on the front lines of learning what's going to happen.
100%. I'm glad you made that really excellent point, Ryan, because I know we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, but the real push within the industry is to move towards hybrid intelligence, which is
Yes.
augmenting human capabilities with machine abilities. And that's
Right.
exactly what's happening. I mean, you look
Right.
at the
Right.
arts world, you get a lot of
Yep.
musicians and sculptors now using these tools to, you know, enhance or evolve their craft.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Um, I've been reading a lot of content around that, because you're gonna, you see people that, and even companies, publications out there that said, with AI, we're going to basically just create AI created content, and that kind of fell flat on its face really quick. as far as like people just did not. There's no authenticity behind it. There's the human element isn't there that provides that quality in the content. So they had to kind of backtrack from that. And then you have obviously the Microsoft versus Google, Microsoft incorporating it in Bing, and then you have Google basically kind of in a position now where if they can find a way to catch AI created content, they can basically punish sites and take that away from people as a means to create content because brings down the quality and so forth. That I'm very interested to kind of see how that whole battle plays out because it's a new kind of situation to kind of have to consider with AI created content and how AI plays a role in a lot of these spaces that were very human driven. But to your point, I think it's going to be more of like a supplement and support to becoming more efficient and doing pieces of their job better. But at the end of the day, there's still a piece that really I don't think it can replace.
No, no, not at all. No, everyone out there, don't worry. We're not trying to replace you with a machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Neil, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time. For our audience's standpoint, if after listening to this, they want to follow up, touch base with you, kind of engage further on anything we talked about, is there a way? Like, what's the best way for them to engage or kind of stay up to date with everything you have going on?
You can come to my website, which is just my name, neilsahota.com.
Okay,
I'm always pushing out latest and greatest stuff in the industry and some content. And you can
cool.
always follow me on social media. So I'm
Okay,
very active on there.
fantastic. Well, really appreciate your time. It's a great conversation. Excited to have you be part of this, and look forward to getting it out to our audience.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.